Okay, we're probably already live. So, hello and welcome to Detention Live from the RPG Academy. I am Michael, and tonight I am joined by the originator, creator, brain trust behind the Detention program, Mr. Caleb G. Caleb, how you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, I guess I'm okay.
Fantastic. I'm using a new setup, so I look a little different. I may sound a little different. I look a little bit washed out myself, I think. I'm a little yellow. I look a little Oompa Loompish. Uh, but if anyone's watching, I don't know yet. If anyone's listening in the future, these detention episodes are meant to be a little bit more laid back, a little bit more um, identifiable as like our normal conversations we might have. We do much less editing, which at this point is like no editing. And the idea is that we are staying here in the RPG hallowed halls after class to keep up with some hooligans, ne'er-do-wells, and academaniacs. Um, so we like to start these episodes with extracurricular, which is what's been going on in our lives outside of the RPG Academy. So Caleb, I'll start with you. What have you been up to the last week or two? Because it's been a while since you've been on the show.
A whole bunch of stuff. Well, here's my first question. Since my task is to be on the Twitch channel, if anyone's actually there, are we actually live? 'Cause it doesn't say.
We should be. Uh,
Oh, okay.
so yeah, I'm trying to go there myself now to see if I can see it. I'm just
Oh, wait a minute. I had to actually log in.
okay. Yeah.
Hey, all right. Wait, what was my Twitch login? Uh, hmm. Pausing. I'm not good enough to type and fill the audio silence. Nope, that wasn't it. Wait, hold on.
I don't know. I don't know if we're even streaming now because it says we are went offline, which may mean that we're just our internet's so crappy. Because now we have a whole bunch of dropped frames and we're up to like 23%. We do actually have two people that are apparently watching, though I don't know if they see anything because it looks like we may have already been dropped off. So if anyone is out there that can hear us, let us know if this broadcast is so god awful that you can't even watch it.
Okay, well, I have logged in and it is definitely lagging behind. So who knows what's going to happen right now?
Well, I know there's always a delay. There's like a 20 to 30-second delay between live and what you see on Twitch, anyways. But it's a matter of how much it's lagging beyond that.
Ah, okay. Uh,
So it looks like our friend Fuller Brad, is
hey, Brad.
on. Uh, he's apparently he can see us because he sent us a message. So let's just pretend like people can watch this and carry
Sure,
on. So
sure.
extracurricular, what's going on, buddy?
All right. So I started my new job a few months ago. That's old news. That's been ramping up. I'm like a real manager now with real
Oh,
responsibilities.
yay!
Yeah. I have a real team of people that report to me. I've gotten 3 or 4 new teams in the past month because we keep changing who's doing what and what my responsibilities are. So that's super fun.
Nice, yeah.
Um, so that's super busy. I'm probably there a good 50, 60 hours a week. I can unfortunately work from home, which is a blessing and a curse.
Oh, wow.
Um, Today was my day off because I worked this past Sunday. Um, I should have been on the computer doing stuff, and I didn't. I said I brought my computer home so I could jump on, and I said, "Hey guys, I'll be off tomorrow, but I'll be online to check email and stuff." I didn't. I didn't do anything. So I'm going to say right now that when I go in tomorrow morning, I'll probably have 120 emails waiting for me. So yeah, that's the majority of my life.
That's all sad. Tell us some
I
good
know that's
stuff.
a bummer, isn't
Yeah,
it?
tell us good stuff, exciting stuff.
Okay, here's something exciting. So today, since I did nothing, I binged all of the CW drama shows that I stopped watching during their actual runtime because the CW app on my Xbox is god awful. So I just waited till they uploaded to Netflix because Netflix has a deal with the CW, and their seasons are there like a week after they air.
Right.
So I finished all of Flash and Arrow and Supernatural.
Nice.
Eh, eh, eh.
Well, don't say anything about Supernatural. The other two I don't care about. I've watched Flash. I'm not watching Arrow. But for my extracurricular, I have just restarted Supernatural. I've been watching every episode again. I'm still in first season. I think
geez.
I'm on episode 22 out of 23 in the first season. I'm gonna watch them all.
Well, you've only got what 12 seasons?
11, I think. Are they on 12 or are they on 13 this year?
I think this season was 12. This season was either 11 or 12. I suppose I could look it up. I have my phone in front of me. But I'm not going.
Who cares? If there's anyone listening in chat, you can let us know. It'd save us the trouble. So I started rewatching Supernatural. I've been getting ready for Origins, which is next week. Right? Yes. Getting ready for Gen Con. We are doing games and panels at those, and I'm just trying to get everything together. Pretty excited about that. My anniversary, my 18th year wedding anniversary is coming up, which I think you didn't mention it, but you had one of those recently too.
I usually have one once a year.
Once a year. So I did not see Wonder Woman, or I should say I have not yet seen Wonder Woman. It's very rare for me not to go to those movies opening night. But the wife actually wants to see this one. So we're going to go watch it Friday. We're going to have a date night, nice dinner, movie. And then on our actual anniversary, I think I'm playing Fantasy Age with Chris Pramus and some other people.
Oh, good job. Good job, husband.
Yeah, exactly.
We saw Wonder Woman opening weekend. It was really, really good. I really hope you're going to like it.
I'm going in with positive expectations. Again, I've heard nothing but great things about it. I've been pretty vocal that I think almost all the DC EU movies so far have been just hot garbage. So I'm hopeful, but cautiously pessimistic, as I say.
It was a really, really good movie. It was very well done. It definitely alleviated the doom and gloom of the DC movie universe that has been established so far.
Right.
It has certainly set up Diana to be a true hero, and it really established her character very well. As an origin story, it was not boring. It really told a lot very nicely.
Nice.
Chris Pine is an outstanding sidekick, damsel in distress character.
Right.
But he's really not. He really is incredibly heroic in his own right. And the dynamic between them was really good.
Oh, very cool. So I recently found online somewhere, I don't remember where now, I think maybe it was Ain't It Cool News, a link to the script that Joss Whedon had written a few years ago. I think like 2008. He was hired to do a treatment on Wonder Woman, and I started reading that just to read the script. Obviously, I love Joss Whedon, so I'll pretty much watch anything he puts out. And it's been interesting. I kind of got a little bit worried. I'm afraid they might be too similar because I don't know if there was any part of his draft that survived. So I kind of stopped after about 12 pages in. But it's an interesting read, so I'm interested to see how it compares. And once I've seen the movie, I will go back and finish it just so I'll know for sure. But I don't know. It's kind of an interesting read. And then you talked about how Chris Pine is the damsel in distress, but not really because he's a hero in his own right. That reminds me of Superman Returns, which I still hold as a much better movie than most people think. And I know I've said this before on somewhere that I think that the boyfriend is the true hero. It's not Superman in that movie. Is it James Marsden? Is that the name of the actor? He plays Cyclops in the X-Men movies.
That sounds familiar.
I don't know if that's Spike from Buffy. One of those. They have similar sounding names. But there's a point in that movie where
it was not Spike.
Where they're in an airplane and Superman's injured, and he he basically dives out of a plane and tries to save him and puts his life. And he was a true hero because he doesn't have any powers. And that's probably the biggest reason why I love that movie is I love the fact that the normal person was at the end of the day the one that saved the day. And I just think that's awesome. I really enjoyed that dynamic. So if Chris Pine is playing anything like that, then I'll enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
Very cool. So it's sort of become a new tradition. You haven't been on for a while that we always cover what we're drinking because usually there's alcohol involved. But I'm just drinking water, and I don't even know if you have anything to drink. So
I neglected to get a beverage, but had I gotten one, it would have been water.
Yeah, we're boring.
We really are. if only Matt were here to tell us about his grown-up adult beverages.
Yes. So now we'll move into because these were not part of the original detentions, but once we went to Twitch, it just sort of has become part and parcel. We're gonna play a little thing of 10 things
with only 2 people.
With only 2 people. So we'll see how it goes. Do you want to give or receive? Phrasing.
Wow. I don't know how to answer that question. I'll start. So you give me the 10 things.
Okay, Caleb. 10 minor league DC characters you want them to make movies out of.
Oh man,
you can go major league because there's some that haven't been made yet. If you,
I'm just gonna say I'm just gonna say weird characters that aren't normally on the focus because I don't know how we're gonna define minor league.
Not the big 3, obviously.
Obviously not the Trinity. Constantine.
1.
Plastic Man.
2.
Jason Blood / Etrigan.
3.
Dr. Fate.
4.
Zatanna.
5.
Swamp Thing.
6.
You're
just going through the cast of Justice League Dark.
I'm just going through the cast of Justice League Dark because that's all I can think of right now. Because I'm really stumbling to think of any other really cool side characters. Booster Gold.
7.
Guy Gardner.
8.
Crap. Oh man, I feel so bad right now. I'm not being a good DC fanboy. No wait, those are Marvel. No, those were not Marvel. Who are the guys that were made out of metal? Like, was it?
Yeah, there's 5 guys that are all made out of metal, but I don't remember their name. Those guys.
Right. Those guys.
9.
And I said him already. Oh, I'm a failure.
Trying to pull it out of you.
Oh man, I'm really glad no one is listening to this because this is terrible.
We actually have 4 people that are watching you fail.
Oh, wow. Thanks, guys.
Someone help him out. Come on, throw something in chat. We're dying here.
The Buona Man.
What?
Yes. He dude that can talk to animals and merge them together.
Is that a real thing?
Yes, it is a real thing.
Okay, yeah. I at least had heard of all the others that you had mentioned. Never heard of Iguana Man?
I think it's Buona.
Buona.
He was in Justice League Unlimited. I think he showed up in Batman Brave and the Bold a couple times. Yeah, he talks to animals, he runs around in a loincloth, and then he can magically merge 2 animals into a weird like centaur combination of the 2 of them to do things. I'm off my game tonight. So what's going on?
All right, so I will see if I can follow that up.
Anything that you can do will be better than this. Michael, 10 things you hope you do not see at Origins.
Nude pictures of myself.
1.
I kind of want to see a lot of stuff at Origins. A fist fight.
2,
A katana fight.
3,
That's a lie. I totally want to see that. Um, the inside of a panel van through a darkly shaded hood.
4,
A hotel bill that's much higher than I expected.
5,
The inside of my wallet because it's going to be empty.
6,
Um, all the games that I want to buy that I can't afford right now.
7,
A disgruntled listener.
8,
Um, I don't want to see Batman versus Superman
9,
like ever again. Um, and I don't want to see Ken or Robin because screw those guys.
10.
Yay!
Yay, 10
10
things.
things. Yeah,
See, you did much better than me.
we really need Matt here. Matt really brings the spark when it comes to that.
Matt brings a spark to all of our lives. I miss Matt.
So it's now time to move into used books. Used books is where we take a look back at a campaign that we ran that probably failed spectacularly or maybe didn't, because we've done this a lot now. We're running out. But like any good used book, there should be some notes in the margins, and we're going to see if we can take a look at those and see if we can use them to help us do better next time. So, Caleb, I know you're kind of on the spot. Do you have a campaign that you want to talk about? If not, I probably could dig one up.
I'm thinking here. Um, I do have a couple really cool Cthulhu campaigns that we started and never finished. We could talk about those.
Sure, yeah. Doesn't have to be D&D.
Yeah. We started a Call of Cthulhu game where we all played versions of ourselves. So we were playing ourselves, but we got to reimagine a little bit about ourselves career-wise and history-wise. So
They call it magical realism?
We tweaked the story a little bit. We did not have any sort of psychic or magical powers. We were all still just regular people. But, for example, instead of working at the job I had then, which was, I think, a crappy retail job, I was like a college professor. Because why not?
Of course not, yeah.
What was really interesting about it was we started the game in the house we were physically playing in. So when we put the game together, we said, all right, the four of us are at the house we're at in real life having a barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started telling the story of what was going on. Long and short of it, the air raid sirens went off. SWAT and military forces rolled into town. Everything got shut down. We didn't know what was going on.
It's like Red Dawn.
Pretty much, yeah. We knew we were playing Cthulhu, but there were no real strong Lovecraftian elements. And then slowly that started creeping in. It was pretty interesting because we kind of got off on tangents because we were really focused on the realism of where we were. So at one point someone said, well, all right, I'm going to run in the basement and get this. And we said, well, that's not in the basement. You can't do that because it wasn't in the basement at the time. So we kind of put ourselves in a bad spot because we were enjoying the blurring of reality by playing off of that you're yourselves in the house we're in. But we didn't quite separate that enough from playing the game. It was fun, though. We had a lot of fun. It quickly became a asteroid touchdown. Alien energy was seeping out. The military had been called, and they were getting infected kind of story. It only made it really 2 sessions, and that second session was barely a session. Honestly, there was nothing wrong with the game. It was a good premise. We had a lot of fun with it, but it just became a time sink that we didn't have. Most of the games I play in real life have fallen apart simply due to time. We can't get together.
I think most in the world, probably. That's what kills most of them.
Yeah. It did not fall apart because the game ended or GM player conflict occurred. It just never had time to play. Some of the people weren't as engaged as other people, so
Yeah.
it was fun though. I think if we want to take a lesson from it, it's really cool to put yourself into a real world or a real world setting into a game, but you have to definitely balance the fantasy with the reality.
Yeah,
'Cause
we were going to start a game here. It never actually happened. But Jared, who I think you've met, and he was on a couple of our podcasts, not very many, but he's one of our faculty members. He was going to run. There's a really fun zombie game he likes to play, and I can't remember the name of it. It's not one of the most well known. And basically, that's what we were going to do. Is we were going to start like we were in the basement playing a game when the zombie apocalypse happened. So whatever we physically had around us was all we could grab. What it was, just like you, whatever physically was in the house. And I was like, well, exciting because I have like 3 swords and nunchucks and have guns, so I was actually pretty prepared. But we all made the agreement that we didn't have kids because in the real situation, every choice I made would be about my children, getting to them if I wasn't with them, keeping them safe, and we just didn't want to deal with that. Plus, I didn't want to deal with the chance that one of them could die. So we just said we're just everything's exactly the same, but none of us have ever had kids, and I think that kind of falls in that. That would have made the game less fun for me. It might have made it more emotionally draining, which could be satisfying, but from a fun quotient, I just didn't want to deal with that.
and that's what we did at a very old version of a catacon in your basement when I ran Dread.
Yep.
I started those games of Dread with "You are sitting in Michael's basement. This happens."
Yep.
It's fun. It's a interesting way to break that barrier of fantasy and reality and get invested in a tabletop game.
So I know this has come up a couple times in some of the forums I lurk in, and I've actually dealt with it a little bit myself. But have you ever had any issues when you're playing quote unquote yourself with the what are my stats? And people are like, well, I'm really smart, so I have an 18 intelligence. We're like, dude, no, 18's like fucking Einstein. You're like maybe a 15. You're above average. But did you ever have any issues where people like would fight over what their stats would be?
Not in any games I have played recently, but back in college with my old original gaming group, back in the day of MySpace and LiveJournal, someone in the group, not me, had the great idea to say, hey, let's stat ourselves as a party and we'll do it anonymously. So everyone can send me your stats and then I will average them and put them on our site. And that immediately led to hurt feelings and pouting and arguments because then the one person who was seeing everyone's submissions got upset that the submissions for this person were what they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bad time.
Yeah.
It was a bad time.
So the game, and I wish I could remember it, it's the game that Jerry wanted to play. It actually has a questionnaire that you have to fill out. It's like an online questionnaire with like, I don't know, 15, 20 questions. And based off of your answers, it gives you 3 scores in 3 stats. And that's the only stats you have for the game. It's been like 2 years since I did it. I don't remember. But I thought that was an interesting way to approach it because it wasn't just, well, I'm average strength, so maybe it's 11. I'm average intelligence, maybe it's 9 type of thing. It's like you just fill out a questionnaire and it asks you questions like, do you consider yourself an outgoing person? Do you have a lot of friends? When you go to parties, do you make jokes or do you hide in the corner? And that would give you like sort of like your personality / charisma. Then you had one that was like mental fortitude. So obviously I don't want to try to develop that, but it was a fun way to do it for that particular game. And it kept us from anybody from arguing, not that anybody else would. I think last time I did this, I was in college, and yes, there was some heated conversation about whose stats were better than whose and all that kind of stuff. I played in a game as a D&D game where we sort of did that as well. We were basically playing D&D, and then boom, there's a flash of light. And now we're all in like a D&D world, and I remember that. again, it's going to sound awful. I was a little bit upset because I felt like I was the only one that was even sort of like taking it seriously. Like everyone else is like, cool, we're in D&D world. And they're like, and I'm all like, but, my girlfriend who, Valor is like, how do I get back to her? Like, I didn't take my glasses. I can't see. I'm basically blind without them. Like, I was like trying to be like emotionally invested in how do we get home? And everyone else is like, I want to be a paladin. And I'm like, what, because at the time I was a bit more religious than I am now. And I was like, I can't imagine being a cleric in a fantasy world because of, my religion. Like, I don't know. I was just trying to take it like serious and nobody else was.
Well, that's a situation where a session 0 would have been very helpful.
Yes, it would have. It would have been very, very helpful. And again, the whole you're you, but you're not dating anyone or engaged to anyone, because I don't remember exactly the time frame there. But yeah, so that would have helped that game a lot. Though I will give the DM credit. He basically had a cleric cast restoration on my eyes, so right away we figured out the glasses problem.
So in the chat, the suggestion, I think this is Brad, is saying, is the zombie game all flesh must be eaten?
Oh, crap. I don't know if that's
it or
not. Maybe.
The more interesting way to make stats, that reminds me of some of those, I forget what they're called, but they came out maybe a year or two ago. It's all the end of the world games.
It's the end of the world, I think.
Oh, there you go. I had it right.
Yeah, I think it's called End of the World, and there's all these different scenarios.
Yeah. There was a Mythos one that had Ragnarok in it, and there was a zombie one, there was a robot one, or an alien one, or something. Like, there were 3 different books. They were different colors. That's the only thing I can remember. They have a more group-oriented stat creation. The stats are pretty streamlined. It's not the 6 standard D&D stats, and you kind of put forth to the group what you think your stat should be, and then people can either upvote it or downvote it. They can agree, they can increase it, they can decrease it. It's like, and you're basically voting anonymously, so it's not as easy to get hurt feelings.
I remember She's a Super Geek did an actual play of that with, I believe, yes, Darcy and God, I can't remember the GM's name. It was the girl from Fantasy Flight, Ostranja. I'm so sorry.
I know the game you're thinking of, because that's what I was thinking of as we were talking about this.
But the lady, I know her on Twitter. We talk several times, and I just cannot think of her name. Katrina, I think. Katrina Oslander or something like that. But she even said, normally we do this secretly, but since we're on an audio podcast, and they actually had to vocally do that segment, and I was like, it was a little awkward. Like, listening in, there was a little bit of you could tell people were trying to be nice.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you guys could do this secretly, I bet we'd be a little bit more touchy. Yeah.
But hey, that session 0 is very important. The agreement of what you want to do at the game, the type of game you want to play. If in your example, everyone had come to the conclusion of, let's have this be a silly, fun, we're ourselves zapped into fake fantasy world, you probably would not have tried to role play it like you did.
Right. Yeah. I would have just been like, all right, cool. I want to be a wizard because that's my favorite class.
Yeah. But if everyone had agreed, no, this is real with consequences, maybe more people would have been what you were trying to do.
Right. And again, that goes back to session 0, and also just conflicting play styles. I wasn't right. They weren't wrong. We just, without talking, had different ideas of what the game should be. And we just sort of try to figure out as we go rather than anything else.
Hey, so we have someone else in the chat here, Sprocketeer. The group I played with for over 25 years generally had several session 0s, and we would create the character in discussion with the GM, assigning attributes and skills rather than rolling them to build characters the GM and players were comfortable with. Man, I hate whimsical comedic games.
Do not listen to Dead Center.
Nope.
Rod Iron's iffy on some episodes.
Any of our games at all.
I think Rod Iron walks that line.
Rod Iron has some emotional punches.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of... It's not whimsical and comedic,
But we do some silly stuff in it.
We do some silly stuff.
Yeah.
Don't listen to Dead Center whatsoever.
But anyone else, it might be our best 3 episodes of anything we've ever done. I still wish to this day we can get back to that game. Out of all the games that have died, I think that might be the one I regret most, even over A New World, even over Deadlands Fate. I loved that game. I love that character so much.
That was a fun game. I want to get back to that game, and I would like to get back to Secrets, Lies, and Undead. Even though
you kind of know something now. Yeah.
I do know a little bit about that, and it was nothing but horror and tragedy for myself and my character.
No, again, it was designed in a way your character was not going to take a back seat, but you were going to stop being treated so poorly, and I was going to move on to someone else. Season 2 was going to be Scott's character's arc, because there was an episode where those 3 dream sequences, and we were going to deal with what
Still
Scott's.
don't understand that.
Well, that's because we didn't get to season 2. That's when all that was going to come up. Did you ever talk to Scott? Like, because I know we built those characters separately. We didn't do like an open session 0 for those. Like, did you know what Scott's whole shtick was with that character?
Nope.
Oh, so I only remember part of it. I'll probably, at some point, I'll get him to correct me. But he basically was cursed by, I think, the Elf Queen, that anyone who looked at his face, which he was her face, would go insane. So that's why she wore a mask. Because if the mask came off, it was just like insanity ray to anyone who, like, almost like a Medusa sort of thing. And that's what that whole thing about her being a prisoner, but she was her own guard. Because basically she was concealing her true self, and we were going to deal with the whole thing, and I was going to give her a chance to either lift or modify the curse and like weaponize it.
Cool. I really like 13th Age mechanically, and I like the story that is presented, but it is one of those settings where I feel a little bit hampered because I don't know the story backwards and forwards. Like D&D is very easy to just play fantasy world and not care about the story. But if you want to jump into a specific setting like Eberron or Dragon Age or whatever, I feel like you have to know a whole lot to make it feel right. And that's how I feel about 13th Age. If I play 13th Age, I just like the rules. But the rules in this case are really, really hinged on how the icons work. And I get a little bit hung up by that.
Yeah, I had this grand plan, and it's still in the back of my head, but scheduling for my in-home game has been off the chart ridiculous. I mean, we got back, we played 2 sessions of Dark Discovery in the last month. There was over an 8-month gap between the last session and these sessions. And it just kept one after another. People couldn't come. People, something was going on. And with Dark Discovery, I've said we are not going to play unless we're all there. And it just seems like one person just kept missing and kept missing and kept missing. Obviously, we had a catacon and, holidays through December, that kind of thing. But if we ever get back to a regular schedule, I want to start doing it where we play Dark Discovery once a month, and then we play the Crimson Throne Pathfinder Adventure Path, but I was going to run it in 13th Age because I don't like Pathfinder rules. I like 13th Age rules, but I hear that is one of the best adventure paths that Paizo's ever made. So I've read through a lot of it. It's cool. I'm looking forward to getting started, but we haven't even had a session 0 yet. It's so frustrating. But yeah, I think 13th Age is a lot of fun. One of the events I signed up for Gen Con is to play 13th Age with Sean, who joined us for Detention a while back. He's a heavy metal GM on Twitter, and he blogs. He's very 13th Age focused on his blog stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that game.
Brad says Secret Lies and Undead is his all-time favorite. I appreciate that.
Hopefully I didn't just ruin it for you.
Well, we're never going to play season 2. It's okay.
Yeah.
He also said don't play Wushu when speaking with Sprocketeer about comedic games versus dark serious games. I will counter that argument because I have successfully used Wushu to play a gritty, grim, noir Lovecraft horror game. And that is a game that you may or may not be able to hear very soon on another podcast.
Ooh. Yeah, I think because we talked about it when we first started playing Wushu, because like we all became infatuated with it. It's such a fun game. It's a great one shot game, but it was originally designed to be kind of a serious game, and I just kept thinking like I don't see how it would work. It's buy-in. If everyone buys in, you can. But we were trying to think like how could you play a serious dramatic game when you have so much control to keep bad things from happening. And I think that a lot of drama is you do a thing and it solves a problem, but it creates a new problem. And I think that's where if you're scripting it, the writer does that, or that kind of GM in a traditional game does that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just haven't played it enough, but that would be my concern is if everyone's not on the same page, and if everyone isn't maybe to the same level of like being a storyteller or role player, it could get wonky.
Yeah, it definitely needs player buy-in and agreement to do the thing that you're trying to do. The key in my experience has been encouraging players to let those story details that they tell not simply be focused on themselves. So in the horror game that I ran, the details that the dice were being pulled from were about the environment, the things that were happening, the creepy, horror, spooky things that were going on, their reaction or other characters' reactions. So the game we played, I was very lucky to get 3 players who were great improv storytellers. They had bought into the concept and were willing to play along with it. And there's a definite point in the game where it clicks for all of them. Like the first couple rounds and dice rolling, it wasn't quite there. And then like partway through the first episode, there's just a total change in the way it's going because they finally grasped what they could really do, and the story just takes off, and it's amazing. So
Yeah,
it absolutely is possible.
I think we saw that in our trial of Wushu, which it looks like Sprocketeer has not listened to any of that yet. You probably won't like it because it is definitely off the wall, crazy, nutso, not serious at all. But if you want to learn how to play Wushu, we did 2 actual series. One trial of Wushu, and then we did another G.I. Joe-shu. Actually, we've done 3 because I also did the Wushuper Friends, which was a like 1977 Super Friends cartoon inspired goof. But basically, the system is very simple. You roll dice. The dice don't decide what happens. You decide that, but the dice tell you how far you got into the scene and how close you are to resolving it. So you don't roll to see if you hit a goblin. You just say, "I kill 4 goblins." You kill 4 goblins. No matter what happens on the dice, those 4 goblins are dead. But the dice might tell you that you've killed all but one of the goblins, or, oh, look, 70 more goblins are around the corner, depending on if you roll high or low or that kind of thing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Wushu is my go-to game for conventions, for quick one-shots, if we don't have anything else planned. In my mind, it is a really great way to teach people how to role play and get them into the mindset of storytelling and shared narration. Sprocketeer says it sounds like a nightmare. It's not. It's the best game ever.
It is so much fun, but if you don't like those types of games, again, you apparently, Caleb says you can play it dark and gritty, but I have not so far. Out of the 3 times I've played and or ran it, it's always been goofy, silly, fun.
It's definitely it's definitely an easy way to just cut loose and do anything. So it's very easy to trip over itself and become shenanigans. And let's be honest, when we play, we want to play a game that's full of shenanigans, and we get people that are willing to be goofy and dumb and get there.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can make it happen though.
I ran one session, wasn't even a full session, of a actual play that I was going to do that involved Jim McClure, Brad from our Dark Discovery game, and then Michael and Jared which again are the faculty members that you guys don't hear a lot about, where it was going to be gunslinger samurai-ish, and it was supposed to be very dramatic, and it just, like everything else, it fell apart. It couldn't get people together, but it was going to be a super serious. It was not long after we did our one shot of L5R that was received very well. And it's like, well, maybe there's something to play in a dramatic game, so I was going to try to develop one. I still love the idea. There's a lot to it that we never got to, obviously, but essentially, I'll go because it's probably never going to happen, or if it even, I won't give away the truth, but I'll give the setup. So it's basically like L5R Samurai, except they're gunslingers. There's this kingdom that they're the only ones that have guns, and it's very Heralds of Valdemar series, if anyone's familiar with that, where the gun chooses the wielder, and if you're chosen, you're the only one that can shoot that gun. If you hand your gun to someone else, they cannot fire it. It just will not work for anyone but you. And the very first scene, one of the established gunslingers finds a young boy who apparently can shoot any gun that he wants. And this has never been heard of, and no one knows why this person can do that. And that was going to be the setup, was that one of the characters was this new person, very, very Judge Dreddish in there, the movie, where you have like the rookie who's being taught the ropes by the established judge, but they have powers in a way. So I don't know. At some point in time, I'd love to get back to it. Probably never will, but I'd love the idea and the mystery behind it. I thought was really cool. So
Brad told Sprocketeer that he might like Dread for a realistic, serious game.
Or it's silly because I love my Scooby-Doo Dread.
Well, what's really funny is when we talk about Dread, I gravitate towards a very serious, real world, you're playing yourself and you're in a horrible situation usage for Dread, and you have gravitated towards Scooby-Doo.
And Star Wars.
Yeah. Weren't we throwing around some Star Trek ideas too?
Yes, I was supposed to put together a Star Trek Dread, and I'll be honest, I have failed. I have tried. I can't find a way into it. I can't break the story. I thought about doing it, obviously like a holodeck, made a lot of sense, but didn't feel right to me. And then I thought about doing like all the captains, like you would play all the different captains, Kirk, Cisco, Picard, and it would be some sort of situation where all the Janeway, all the captains from all the different series would be put together. That still just didn't feel right to me. So I don't know. I haven't found, because like Scooby-Doo, I right away was like, okay, Scooby's dead. It's in the future. It's gonna be odd. It's like Scooby-Doo meets Clue. I knew exactly what I was doing. Star Wars, knew exactly what I was doing. My D&D Dread, knew exactly what I was doing. I can't figure out Star Trek. I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch the whole series again or something, or all of them. Maybe
you could maybe do something where they're on a station like DS9, and the tower is related to how the station operates, or a crisis that's locked down the station, something like that. I don't know.
Or maybe like an unstable wormhole, and when the tower collapses, it does a thing, or like a neutron star that's about to go pulsar, and if they don't solve the thing, that goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that might be the way to do it, is let the tower represent something else. So it's still in the back of the head. Like every now and then I get a thought, but just hasn't clicked yet.
Yeah.
All right, so it's time to move into everyone's favorite part of detention. Caleb, where have my fingers been?
Oh, we're doing this again with only two of us?
We always do it. It's tradition now.
It's gonna be so bad.
Oh yeah, they're always bad. They're always bad.
But it's gonna be worse because Matt's not here.
All right, I gotta give props. Scott nails some of these finger games. Phrasing.
Right.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
The world's largest candy store.
You have diabetes. Fuck! That's where my fingers have been.
We apologize to any of our listeners if that was offensive. All right. Where have my fingers been? Where have my fingers been?
The Wonder Woman world premiere.
Hey, this is really great. I love Wonder Woman. It's so great to see a female character and a female director and so many people here being out to love it. And it's going to be such a great movie. This is really dumb. Superhero movies should be about men. You're stupid. Okay, I'm going to leave now. Hey, that's where my fingers have been.
And that's fantasy right there, people.
That was fantasy.
Okay, so our next to last segment here is cryptozoology. That's where we talk about a monster, mainly in D&D, mainly in D&D 5e, but not necessarily. We talk about ways we've used it, ways we could use it. We did not pick one. So I'll throw it to the audience. Anybody in chat who would like for us to cover a monster, you got a minute or so, and then we'll pick one at random if we don't get a suggestion.
We apparently offended Sprocketeer with our diabetes jokes. I apologize.
I'm so sorry. Don't go into the world's largest candy store, though. I mean,
Nope,
that's just
never.
temptation you don't need.
There's a chocolate factory right down the street from where I live. It used to be Harry London's chocolates, and they got bought out by somebody else. And you could go on tours and get lots of samples.
Nice. All right. So Sprocketeer asks if kobolds are so weak, why aren't they extinct? So we can talk about kobolds in our cryptozoology. So I'll start with you, Caleb. Any thoughts on kobolds? Have you used them before?
Everyone's used kobolds. Kobolds are I think, second most common monsters in the monster manual for low-level parties. You always start with goblins, and then you go to kobolds. Always.
Not always.
Always. And then there's a giant spider.
Yes.
It's just how it goes. Kobolds are interesting. On one hand, they are tiny little lizard people that are just jokes. Or same for goblins, Sprocketeer. Either way, we're stuck on kobolds now, so deal with it. They're annoying. They sound funny. They're just weird things that are off in the woods. They live in tribes, whatever. But then some of the stories about them make them descendants or offshoots of dragons, and they have this draconic blood in them, and they worship different dragons, or they're related to different dragons. So you could do a lot with them in a bigger story. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I used them in Dead Center.
Yes.
Yes, I did, because they were basically the servants of the Red Dragon.
Yes. Steve, I think his name was.
Sure.
Larry, something like that.
It was something like that. Because nothing in that game was serious. I believe in another campaign, I used them as kind of recurring enemies, in that they were harrowing some of. It was a merchant train. Merchants were traveling from one city to the other, and they kept getting harassed by these kobolds. And eventually, the PCs realized that it was one tribe of kobolds the whole time, and they had to track down the home base of the tribe, and they were actually in the service of a dragon. So I've used them the same way multiple times. They're fun. They're a little bit more dangerous than a goblin. They seem to be a little bit more of a threat because they're a little bit more organized. They potentially have more tactics. And they have that threat of a dragon when you might be too low of a level to deal with a dragon.
It's like my bodyguard situation. Let's kill the kobolds. Oh, wait. Uh-oh, we're dead.
Yeah. But, I mean, the game is called D&D, which stands for Dungeons and Dragons, which is what I should have said to begin with. The game is called Dungeons and Dragons, and you rarely ever fight dragons.
Yes, that's true.
Because they're very complicated and they're very
And
dangerous.
in my games, you very rarely go into dungeons.
It's true.
Yeah, I'm very, very rarely do I do dungeon crawls in my games. Like, you might go into like a sewer, you might go into like an abandoned building, but very rarely do you go underground into an ancient complex that has multiple rooms, traps, and monsters.
We could go into a tangent discussion of what really constitutes a dungeon, and we could argue that a dungeon is an all-encompassing term for a self-contained environment in which an adventure happens.
Yes.
So if we are going through an abandoned building or a series of sewers or a jungle, that could be a dungeon setting.
True, but I think that's modern game design that has creeped in. I think when D&D
Oh,
was
sure.
invented, their dungeons were always underground type of a thing. But
Oh, yeah.
but to get to Sprocketeer's question about goblins, because they breed like crazy, and when you start to wipe them out, they go to someone else and say, "Please help us. We'll be your servants." And then they get bigger, dumber things to kill people, and then they just keep breeding the whole time. That's why goblins are still around. But
And there's
kobolds,
also a lot more creatures in the goblinoid family line because hobgoblins and bugbears are all goblinoids. So they're not all weak. Some of them are big and strong.
yep. So I am not sure if I have ever in my entire gaming career used a kobold.
Hmm.
I don't think so. I'm not a fan of them. But I'll tell you why, because I'm bad at combats. See, here's the thing about kobolds. They're not difficult to kill when you don't play them properly. When you play them just like a bag of hit points and you're like, here's 4 kobolds in a field, let's go stab them with sticks until they die. Kobolds are designed to be very clever and sneaky and crafty, and they're trap makers. So it would be very dangerous to follow a kobold into its lair. It'd be like following like a snake into its pit. You don't know when the snake's going to have enough room to turn around and get you. So it's like dangerous to do that unless you're very confident. Following a kobold into its lair should be terrifying because the kobolds know where all the traps are. You don't. They have home field advantage, and I have never used them in that capacity because I can't remember if I've ever used them at all. But even in other situations that I've seen them used, it's always here's 6 kobolds, poke them with sticks until they're dead.
And that's a little bit of a disservice to them. Um, but that being said, they tend to be seen as just goofy, pointless, not very important bad guys. But any villain, any monster of the week could be seen like that. It's just since kobolds are so weak, it's easy to stick them into that corner and not pay attention to them.
Yeah.
Treating them like guerrilla warriors or jungle experts, like Sprocketeer mentioned in the chat, that is a good way to make them very dangerous. Some monster manuals have given us different versions of kobolds, winged kobolds or beefier kobolds or smarter spell slinging kobolds to try to give us some more options. I think 4th edition had a bunch of different kobolds you could pick from.
Actually, I have to take that back. Thinking on 4th edition, I did use them some because I think they were in one of the modules that first came out with it. Because you had the alchemist kobolds that threw like the glue pots and the alchemist fire pots. So I think I did use them in 4th edition.
I always think of kobolds as chickens, lizardy chickens for some reason, and I blame that on an old GM who threw kobolds at us, but didn't have kobold figures, but had chicken figures and put chickens on the board. So I've always associated kobolds and chickens.
Nice. I would like to try to use an idea where like the PCs are setting up sort of like a heist, or they're going into like a legendary dungeon that is supposed to be the most deadly dungeon in the world. Like, I don't know, maybe the Tomb of Horrors. And so they seek out a kobold to be like their guide. Like this is a kobold who's, they make traps in their sleep. Let's take one of those with us. That would be cool for a story. My fear is that they were basically introducing a DMPC situation unless one of the players is playing a kobold. But that could be an interesting way to use them, is use them as something you need, rather than something that you're fighting. And I don't know, beyond that, I do like the idea of the foreshadowing that, kobolds could mean dragon. And, if the players are aware of that, that might cause some trepidation that would kind of slow down their gung-ho murder hoboing in an early part of an adventure.
The question always arises when we're playing D&D or fantasy magic game. What is the line between player knowledge and character knowledge? And we always talk about metagaming, and this is one of those areas where it's very interesting to think about. An average commoner in a fantasy world might not know what a kobold is. They might think it is a terrifying lizard creature. So as an adventurer, are you bringing that knowledge that it is not a terrifying lizard creature because you've killed them before or you've read about them in books? Or are you bringing along that commoner character knowledge that, oh, this is a terrifying lizard creature, what am I going to do? But of course, as soon as you've played one game of D&D, you know what it is. And then when you're playing your next character, you have that player knowledge now. And it becomes a lot harder to role play the emotions behind combat encounters.
So I think that gets into a conversation that we might want to spend time on in a future episode. I think that's part of the way the game has evolved. Because my view, I didn't start with like OD&D. I started with Basic, but it had been out for a while. I think it was the Metzer Red Box is what I started with. And in my viewpoint, from what I played as a kid and what I know about the hobby, is that originally playing D&D, you weren't really leveling up your character. You were leveling up yourself in a lot of ways. Your character was an avatar for you in the game. And when you got killed by a kobold, you as a player now knew what to do. When you got killed by a trap, you as a player now knew what to do. And that was like part of the game. Like, you weren't supposed to try to hide that. You weren't supposed to be like, well, I don't know what a beholder is. It was supposed to be like, no, guys, this is a beholder. And you tell everyone how to prepare. Or you're like, no, we want to check the third brick down from the right because that's where they always hide the traps. And it was designed to do that. And now, I think the game has evolved and changed, not necessarily better or worse, but just different, where it's a lot about the story, and we don't want to give a mechanical advantage in a way that doesn't make sense because that can lessen the tension of the story. Does that make any sense?
It does, absolutely. What I think is very interesting, and this is purely my opinion, but Dungeons and Dragons is not at its core a story-driven game. It's a mechanically driven game. But the current trend is to want to dig into those storytelling moments and support them and let cool group narration happen and encourage that and foster that. But D&D is so grounded in mechanics that it's a very challenging situation. For example, look at Wrought Iron. Wrought Iron is a very narration-heavy game, a very story-focused game. And the reason I think that worked very well is because we very rarely rolled the dice. And that was not my intent going into that game when we started running and recording that. But the way it evolved, I saw it very quickly going much more towards the role-playing between the three of you and your story. So I made the conscious choice to eliminate as much dice rolling as possible. I think in every combat situation that happened, it was very much just okay, roll an attack, but narrate the whole situation around what you're doing. And it was more of a roll some dice just to kind of get flavor in there. So, yes, we definitely want to tell more stories, but D&D sometimes makes it harder.
Well, and I think, again, where sometimes it's hard for me to get away from my experience, my opinions, because I don't think D&D does get in the way, but that's because I am so willing to ignore the rules in every situation that I ignore the things that would make it difficult, because you're right that as much as I say, like if people ask me what is D&D, I will say it's a cooperative storytelling game, but it's really not.
No,
It's
not at
not,
all.
but it is the way I play it. The way I enjoy playing it is when it is like that. So it's one of those things where, like I noticed the other day. I know not everyone listens to Dark Discovery because it's a it's a patron only thing, and even right now I don't know how many patrons will listen to it because we had such a large gap. I think most of them have given up on it, but 90% of our roles are me saying high or low and doing my randomizer. Like that's what we roll more than anything is they say, is this there or does this happen? And I will say pick high or low and I'll roll my 2 dice. Like that's it. That's the majority of the rolls. And beyond that, it's skill checks. There'll be a spot check here and now and then, an intimidation check, that kind of thing. But it is so narratively focused and everyone's just role playing, which is what I want them to do. And there's been so little combat that it's almost we're not really playing D&D in Dark Discovery, but it might be my favorite game I've ever ran. I'm having so much fun with it because I don't let the rules get in the way. But we realistically may be better off switching to a system that supports that type of play rather than just ignoring D&D to have that type of play.
Or just coming up with a really serious hack of the rules that support what you are doing, but still use D&D as the bones, still use the stats and skills that you guys have, still use your character abilities, but think of a different way to utilize them to help facilitate the narration focus that you've been developing.
Right. But I mean, I don't obviously disagree with that, but it's just one of those things where, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're calling it D&D. We're all having a ton of fun. I don't think we need to change it. But for anyone listening who's like, I want to listen to a D&D game, I don't know that Dark Discovery qualifies. But it's a lot of fun. So hopefully people are enjoying listening to it when they do.
Yeah. To each his or her own, to each their own.
Yep. But we do want to actually, on our docket of faculty meetings, is a dungeon delve type of episode where we were going to talk a bunch about dungeons. So we need to get to that soon because I think that would be a fun topic. For me, and again, this is my evolution of a DM where I was a terrible DM for a very long time, but I kept doing it and I got better and got better, is I quickly found that I am better at running social games than I am running combat games, which should be no surprise to you. But I got there honestly, is I would run games where we were in dungeons and they weren't fun. And then I would run a game where we're hanging out in the city and the players really got into it because they were, I had all these different factions, I had these NPCs and there were twists and there were mysteries. But when I took them down into a dungeon and it's like you're in a 5 foot by 5 foot hallway, there's a door to your right. What do you do? And then they open the door and there's 2 goblins in there, playing checkers and they kill them. Like, I'm just not good at that. So rather than getting good at that, I just stopped doing it. And I got really good at the other part and just ignored that, which is a microcosm of how I play the game to begin with. But every now and then I still like to go into dungeons, but I never got good at them. So I'm not sure what I'm doing there. So I'll be interested to get your take of that as someone who is more focused on the crunchy side and who probably could run a dungeon encounter, more adeptly than I could.
Well, if wrought iron is any evidence, I'm very bad at designing dungeons.
Well, I don't think you were bad at designing dungeons. I think that was a difficult dungeon to get across in our medium. Because none of us were in the same room. None of us could see a map. None of us were trying to map it. We were all just assuming that eventually we'd get to where we were going. So the idea that we were getting lost was lost on us.
Yeah. Well, that actually goes into a question that Brad asked. Does the fact that you are doing a podcast tend to drive it that way? The mechanics are combat seem as though they would be difficult to keep interesting in audio only. Yeah, it's tough when we are doing an audio-only format. Sticking to the rules as written, not that 5e has that many heavy rules for gridding how spells work and stuff like that, but really focusing on the tactical side of combat is very tough to do in a podcast.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also would say when we first started doing the podcast, when it was Evan and I, and because I wanted to do actual plays from the beginning, I was the one that drove that part of it. Evan was fine with just doing faculty meetings or dungeon talks, whatever. And I really wanted to do games, and so I started listening to a bunch of podcasts, just randomly picking some. And there were 2 or 3 that I listened to early on that were very combat heavy, and they were following the rules, and I thought they were as boring as shit. I could not keep up with who was doing what. There was a lot of I move here, I attack this one, and I'm like, this is awful. So I made the decision that if we were going to do an actual play, that we would be more descriptive. And originally we were using maps and minis. Like we started to do that, and then very quickly, because of D&D Next, we decided to stop. And I think that might be the best decision I've ever made as a DM. It's made my game so much better because it fits my style. It's not better. It's better for me to run that type of game. But I completely agree, Brad. I would be hats off to anyone who can run a game that doesn't have any visual components by those rules and make it engaging, because I cannot.
Well, there are other tools to use as well. Sprocketeer brought up Roll20. Roll20 is a tool that can create a shared map, and there are many other software systems out there that players who are not in the same physical location can share a map. And for a home game where you can say, all right, I'm going to move 3 spaces over here and attack this guy because you can see the tokens and you're all looking at the same map, sure, super easy. When you're recording a podcast and you say, I move 3 spaces over here and attack this guy, it's terrible audio.
Now, if we did a game like Twitch, like we probably will at some point start doing that, then we could do that very easily. We could have Roll20 up, and the audience could see the screen, but I kind of like what Sprocket here is saying. That's different, but for our audio only podcast, because actually there's an example of this. We'll show you how easy it is to fall into that. There's one episode of Secret Lies in the Undead where we did use maps and minis.
Yes,
and it was a fun game. But I went back when I was editing that. I was like, no one knows what's happening, because it was all I move here. Like we all fell into it so easily when we could see the map. We stopped describing things and we just said, I'm going to move up behind this one and attack it.
Sprocketeer liked our RuneQuest game.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Again, that was a very sort of crunchy game, and spoilers, we all died at the end.
Yep. But the point is that there were no maps and it was all descriptive. So good example of how we were able to successfully deal with a lot of combat without relying on that.
I will counter. I had a couple people tell me that they were in fact confused in that game, that they got confused on where we were in relation to other things. Obviously that's a couple people, it may not be the majority of them. But there was there's different sides of that, but there were a couple people that were like, I had no idea where anybody was at any time. It was just sort of apparently you're in front of a baboon now, but there was no like spatial recognition of where they were in relation to other characters at times. So, I think that's a game that we probably should have had a map, but again, we pretty much told, we didn't want them. That's not kind of our style, but if the audience can see the map, it's totally different. But yeah,
I was one of those people that was very confused where we were at all times.
Yeah, I had to edit around a few things. Some of your I don't know what's happening never made it into the podcast.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely there was some I don't know where I'm at type of a thing.
Yeah.
And we did a trial of Identico just a few days ago. It'll be out in about 3 weeks. And that's a game where I felt like a map would have been helpful. Not for the combat, because the combat was very fluid, but just for like some of the setups. Like it was very clear that the DM had maps. And as they were describing where people were in relation to other people, it wasn't just, there's 4 people in the room. It was one's by the door, one's by the elevator, one's on a perch, sniper perch. When Michael was doing the hacking, he had like a map of hacking, And depending on your role, it would show you how far into the network you got. And I think that would have been very helpful to actually see visually when we were playing it.
Yeah, for that game, all of that material was in the uh, session supplements that was being run for us. So that was a physical handout that could have been put on the table if we had been playing together. And there were a couple moments where the GM actually held things up to the camera so we could all see it.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading the chat. So yes, Brad, I have played with maps and minis the majority of my gaming career. By far, I used maps and minis, and it wasn't until when I first started, we didn't. Like when I first started playing, 12 years old, basic D&D, it was all just you're in a room, you're fighting. Like I would have a map, and I would tell them where they were going. They were supposed to map, but none of my friends did because they didn't care. And then when 3.5 came out, we switched to having maps and minis, and we played that all the way up until we started the podcast. So, I mean, that's 15, 20 years or so. I mean, I don't know, a very long time that I was using maps and minis. And there were even in college, we played AD&D and second D&D, and we used maps and minis some. It wasn't necessarily gridded, but we would draw a map and we would put our minis and show representation. But it wasn't as much like I moved 3 steps because AD&D didn't have it, from what I remember, that way. But we would know where things were with a map and minis representation.
Yeah, in college, when I was playing, we played 3.0, 3.5. We always had maps and minis, and we always had someone tasked with mapping the dungeon we were in, to the point that the GM had us make sure we had map making supplies when we were in town. We bought parchment and ink and things like that.
And if you didn't, you couldn't make a map. Or I have done the thing where you get hit like by a fireball, and I would roll a save and be like, oh, your map's gone, and I would take the map from them so that they don't know where they're at anymore because their map burned up.
Man, you're a mean GM.
I was. I lost my train of thought there for a second.
I like the concept, I think Brad pointed this out in the chat, of actually having a screen to play on even when you're sitting around a table. Because an old school grid, whether you're on a wet erase board or actual grid paper, you just rip off a sheet when you're in the next room, it's very unwieldy. It's very difficult to deal with. I'm a terrible artist. Trying to draw the squiggles of, okay, you're on the road. No, wait, no, this is a river. Let me use my blue pen because they're the same damn squiggles.
Is that a dick? No, it's a horse that looks like a dick.
Yeah. My caves always looked the same because they were just big circles.
Yeah.
It's always a pain. Having a big screen to actually just display a picture on, like a big PDF or some sort of image that has a grid over it that you can just plop your minis on and move them around. That's cool. I'm not technologically savvy enough, and I can't afford a big screen.
Well, anyone who goes back, if you go back through our podcast or through our website, one of the first things I ever wrote was me building the game table that we play on. Originally, it was a giant grid that I had printed off. It was 1-inch squares and had a laminate over top of it, so the entire table was a battle map. And that's what we played on. We played 4th edition for a long time. Maps, minis, we would draw everything. I had multicolored wet erase for everything. And I remember there's a very early faculty meeting where Nico was on it, and we talked about one of the reasons why I don't like maps and minis was that I felt like there was a huge disconnect between building to tension where you're about to roll initiative, you're talking to the guard or you're trying to bluff your way past the dragon, whatever, and that moment of will it work or will it won't, and then I'm like, roll initiative. Oh crap, it didn't work. And then there was like 10 minutes of nothing. Everybody's pulling out their character sheet and getting their minis. I'm trying to draw a map. I'm trying to draw it really fast because I don't want to lose that tension we had. So I draw a really shitty map because I'm trying to draw it really fast. And then we end up with a really shitty map. And Nico was like, it's fine. No one cares. Take your time. We're all still excited. But I feel like there's a disconnect, which is one of the biggest things I like about not having them anymore is there is no difference. You go straight from tension to combat without any delay, without any sort of transition. And that's what I like so much about that, the freedom to take any situation into a combat or back out without having to break out maps and draw a dick pic.
Well, no one wants you to draw that.
That's
Or
they're all going to
do.
look that way.
That's fine. Well, hey, we really got off on a deep rabbit hole tangent there from Kobolds.
Yep. Absolutely. Speaking of maps, actually, again, I'll plug my own thing. I did a YouTube video just a couple of days ago on our YouTube about how to use Excel to make graph paper, to use it to make simple dungeons. And back when I made dungeons, that's how I made them. This was back, ages ago, back in the before times. Now I'm sure there's free versions of what I did that are better, but I thought it'd be a fun little video. Seems to be getting good response, but yeah, basically you make Excel, turn it into a graph paper by gridding it and then grayscaling it. You take a picture of that, and then you use your paint tools to like white out blocks to make paths and add circles to make rooms and stuff. Super easy. I'm going to be running a game at Origins, and there's going to be a small dungeon in it, and I'm going to make it in that. So I'll probably will share it when I get done.
That's cool.
So anyway, the last thing that we do is we throw it to the audience for a Q&A, which we've already kind of been doing that with Brad and with Sprocketeer, but we'll do one official question. So the next one that pops in can be anything about D&D, role-playing games, about us, about our opinions on movies or food or whatever. It's your chance to ask us anything, and we will answer it or not because we reserve the right not to. And I will actually ask you guys as well, has the stream been going okay? Has there been any lag issues? Because no one said anything that I've seen, but I didn't know if maybe it just hasn't come up, because I was curious if my computer is handling the load.
Well, I've been looking at the video playing that's behind us in real time, and it seems to have been going okay.
Sprocketeer says it's been okay as well. Because at this point, I think I've got the computer side figured out. The only issue we're running into is the internet. We pay for upgraded internet. We're not getting the speeds. I don't know if the wife may be upstairs watching Netflix or whatever, but I don't think there's anything else I can do hardware or software wise, other than just paying for an additional internet package. And I don't know if I can justify that for as little as we do this right now, but maybe in the future sometime. So yeah, so one last call for Brad. There's other people watching, though I think one of them's you. Legendary Pants hasn't weighed in, but Brad, Legendary Pants, or Sprocketeer, any questions that you would like for us to end this show on, let us know. I will take a drink of water while we wait.
There's a chance that I will be at Origins this year, probably on Sunday.
Yep, I actually had a game on Sunday that I canceled, so I could be free in case you show up.
Oh, well, now I'm going to feel really bad if I can't make it.
Yeah, you should. You should feel bad.
I will. I feel bad most of the time.
I'm sure I'll find something to do if you're not there.
If nothing else, just wander around the vendor hall and demo games.
Yeah. Or hand out cards saying, please come to Academicon and be a vendor.
Oh. There's two questions. Oh. Let's go Brad's real quick. He brought some magic packs to do a synergy session. Do you plan on running a session 0 synergy session and actually playing the game? Yes, that is something we've been talking about doing for a really long time. One of those secret projects that we started several years ago that died off was based completely on that. We'll get back to that one of these days.
One of these days. I will say Chris Burlew from the Redemption podcast, he was on, I think, the most recent Synergy session, and he is writing up that adventure for Academicon. That's going to be one of the things that he runs, is the adventure based off of our Synergy session. So someone will do it, even if it's not us.
Yeah. Sprocketeer said, what is your favorite gaming product of all time? Supplement, scenario, etc.
Oof. So that's really tough for me because I don't use a lot of that. I've always just made stuff up. So you go first while I think about that. I mean,
great.
So I'm assuming we don't mean like games. Like I can't just say like 13th Age because I think that's a good system, but it has to be, like an adventure module or something like that. Yeah, I'm looking at my shelf over here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to see what I have on the shelf over there. Um. We got some leniency. Sprocketeer said rule set to anything.
Ah, okay.
Um. Okay. Well, here's kind of a good answer. I really like the Dresden Files role playing game books. It's based on Fate. It was Fate before Fate Core came out. I like it because of how it is written, because it's basically presented as the characters in the fiction reading slash learning these rules about themselves. So there's this huge book to read through, but then all the side notes are from three of the characters discussing what's going on. And it was established within the Dresden novels that one of them is a GM and the other ones are playing the game. It's not D&D. It was something they made up. I think it was called Arcanos. Um, so it's basically the GM Billy the werewolf running the game, and Harry and Bob the Skull are reading the book, arguing with him about the rules. So it's a really clever way to frame it and keep you invested in the fiction. The Fate rules are ridiculously complicated to fit into the Dresden universe, so it's hard to wrangle sometimes. But they're just really pretty books. They're really well made. They're really well written. There's one supplement that's just the rules, and the other one is essentially the monster manual, but it's all the characters out of the Dresden novels. So if you want to play Billy the Werewolf, you can just get the sheet for Billy the Werewolf. He's right there, and it's really cool. Sprocketeer, the TV show is a pale comparison of the novels. Although it does star, is it Paul Blackthorne as Harry? And he's a really good Harry. He is currently playing Lance in Arrow. He's a really good version of Harry. But the novels are fantastic. There's 12 or no, there's 14, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, there's 14 of them. The first three are miserably boring. Just power through them and then read the rest of the books. They are nothing like the TV series. The TV series is a TV series. It's a weird spinoff. Well, I enjoyed it too. It was just nothing compared to the story.
So in typical Michael fashion, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you two.
Yep.
So my first is the Fate Core book. I've said many times, I don't know if Sprocketeer has listened to a lot of our other shows, that I've yet to play a game of Fate that lives up to the promise that the book made me. But reading that book drastically opened my eyes to how to run a better game. It is a very narrative heavy style that I don't think the mechanics work as well as maybe people think they do, or I'm just not good at them and I can't make them work. But that book, just reading that book from cover to cover, was eye-opening to me in how to let characters be free to do what they want, and not necessarily like do what they want and change, cheat, but approach the game the way they want to approach it. And it was an amazing book, and it really helped me be a better game master, I think. The second one would be the Eberron campaign setting for 3.5, and they also revised it for 4. I'm on record. I love Eberron. It's my favorite setting. I loved that setting book. I have you can't see. I have almost all the 3.5 ones. I went back and I've refound and repurchased. So I have almost the entire collection of those. I love everything about Eberron. And I love the campaign book, the way it lays out. This is what the players know. This is what's really going on. The players don't know anything. They're wrong. And I just loved that. And there also was one of the beginning modules, I think is called Shadows of the Last War. I tried to find it. That's why I was leaning over trying to get it off my shelf. I can't dig it out right now. It was probably the first module I had ran in 10 years because I just stopped running them after basic D&D. And I loved that module. I've ran it multiple times for multiple groups. And it's actually, God, I wish I could find it. I actually may take a second look for it. It is where the crystal key that I use in all my games came from. There's a crystal key in that module, and that's where the inspiration arose from. That I use it for different things, but the idea of a crystal key came from that module.
Was it also sometimes a dagger?
No.
Oh, that's just you.
Yeah. So.
I really like Eberron too. I like it though because it is fantasy technology. I like the tech behind all of it. I like the political intrigue of the different houses, even though I do not enjoy political intrigue games and I'm terrible at running them or playing them. But yeah, Eberron's really cool.
I like it. I'm going to shout. Oh, maybe this is it. Hold on. That the... because it makes sense to me. Again, I've said this many times that D&D never, the typical medieval European setting that happens to have dragons and wizards in it doesn't make sense to me. And, I think what Keith did was say, if there really was magic, it would function a lot like technology. People would use it to solve problems. So you would have ever-burning torches in places that could afford them. You would have, airships because they can do that. And it's like, it just made so much more sense to me that that's how a culture would develop that actually had magic rather than here's medieval Europe and there's dragons and wizards. So I think that's what really captured my imagination. It's the game that I would have made if I was smart enough and, had enough drive to actually do it. This isn't it. Give me one more second. Keep talking.
Well, I will say here that both of us are wrong because our favorite gaming product, the correct answer is Easy Roller Dice.
Well, yeah.
Because Easy Roller Dice makes a fine dice product that we love and use every day. You also make awesome metal dice that you can throw at people as weapons.
Haha, I found it. It is Shadows of the Last War. And longtime listeners will recognize this.
Oh. We all know what that is.
Yeah. So for that game, you guys never actually saw it, but I took that picture. I took a picture of it with my phone, uploaded it to my computer, erased all the text, redrew in some of the lines because they were blurry because that's a shitty way to do things, actually printed it out, colored it, and laminated it. I physically have a copy of this key, and I've now lost it. I don't know where it went. But I kept bringing it up.
I've seen it. I saw it once.
I'm sure I showed it to you.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Yeah.
I think it was that first Academaniacs. I was in your basement.
Probably, yeah. I took it to one of the conventions. I don't know if it was a first Academicon that we were out or a Gen Con or somewhere. I had it as part of my stuff because it was going to be a prop, and it never made it home. I don't know if I dropped it in the hallway or something, but I've never got around to making it again. But at some point, I probably will because it's going to be. Actually, it's in Dark Discovery. That same key is in Dark Discovery.
We now understand the shared universe of all of Michael's D&D games connected by this key.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a throwaway, almost like a gag. The key showed up, and actually Graydon, who was in Made Men, showed up, and it was supposed to be like a really quick, oh, that's funny, and the characters, of course, doing things I didn't expect, and now it's become a central plot point to the story. So, yeah, go characters.
No plan survives contact with the players.
That is correct. Well, to everyone that was watching and listening, and particularly to Sprocketeer and Brad for keeping up with the chat with us, we really appreciate that. And then Legendary Pants, thanks for watching. Even if you didn't chime in, maybe next time you will. But we really appreciate you guys watching. I sent out a tweet a couple days ago asking if maybe we should change up Detention a little bit, only because a lot of people tell us they really like it, but we're not getting a lot of people watching. So it's sort of that like, okay, is it the people watch later? They just don't have time on Wednesday nights, which is totally fair. But, do we need to continue to set aside the time to do this every Wednesday and blah, blah, blah? And it seems like overwhelmingly people said, no, keep it as is. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep trucking, and hopefully we will grow an audience. So we really appreciate those of you who were with us tonight, and of course anyone watching or listening in the future. So until then, this has been Michael.
And me. Hi, I'm Caleb.
And we will see you next time. All right, we got to do our awkward wave out. It's tradition now. You have to just awkwardly wave for a long time until I do the button.